All that remained was an empty chair, and a teenage girl had vanished forever. Hello, true crimerers. This is the case of Molly Bish. Viewer discretion is advised. Real quick before we get started, of course, hello, my name is Mike. I tell 3 true crime stories a week here on YouTube, so please subscribe if you're into that kind of thing. Give this video a like. I also tell short form true crime stories over on TikTok, where I have about 3 million or so followers. You can click the link that shows up here in the beginning and also at the end. It's also linked in the link tree in the description of this video below. I actually have 2 pages where I tell true crime stories, so feel free to follow one or both or none, up to you. And then I also have a Discord server. Please be over the age of 18 if you're going to join it, or else you'll be kicked out of there. I sell merch. We ship all over the entire world. And then lastly, if there's a case you want me to cover, just email me at makingatruecrimerertwo. That is also listed below. And just send me the name of the person, where it happened, when it happened. I'll add it to the list. I do have close to 5,300 names on there, so it may be a while because I pick my cases at random, to be fair. So it'll happen one day, I just can't tell you when. But let's get into today's case. Molly Ann Bish was born on August 2nd, 1983, and she lived her entire life in Warren, Massachusetts. Molly was the youngest of 3 kids. Her and her siblings were really close, but I believe she was the closest with her sister Heather, and they were like the best of friends growing up. Molly was attending Quaboag Regional High School. Did I say that right? Quaboag or Quaboag? She was incredibly athletic. She was on the softball team. She played basketball and soccer, which was her favorite sport. Molly was your typical teenage girl. She loved to go out to the mall. She loved shopping. She loved listening to music. She was funny, likable, lovable, even at a young age, because she was about 16 years old when this happened. I mean, she was still very mature for her age. She was always there for others. She at least tried to help everyone that she could, that she had the power to help. And I think that's probably a part of the reason why she wanted to become a lifeguard. And that's what she was doing at the time of this case. She had just started a job as a lifeguard. And like I said, they were living in Warren, Massachusetts, and at least back then, I don't know now, but back in 2000, Warren was a small town. It was described as back then as being one of those small towns that is really good for families, really a safe community. People would leave their doors unlocked, their windows unlocked. There really wasn't concern where, if kids were outside playing, outside of the, parental view, if you will. Parents weren't really afraid of their kids being taken or anything like that. So it was really kind of like the idyllic, perfect little place for, the Bish family to live. By 2000, her sister Heather and her brother John Jr., they had gone to college. And like I said, Molly was a lifeguard, and where she did that was at Commons Pond. Her parents would say that Molly worked really hard to get this job, and she was so excited to do it. The one concern, however, is that Commons Pond is surrounded by woods. I mean, it is like you got the pond in the middle, and then I'm showing pictures, of course, and it's just surrounded by where, if you were to go into those woods, nobody can see it, kind of thing. It's the pond itself is beautiful, but then the surroundings can be kind of scary. So it was the morning of June 27th, 2000. Molly's mom, Maggie, would always drive her to school and also to her lifeguard job. So that morning at about 9:50 a.m., Molly and Maggie stop at a convenience store. And the image I'm showing is essentially the last known image ever taken of Molly Bish. This is from the convenience store when her and her mom had made a quick purchase. Maggie says that then at 9:58 a.m., they arrive at the parking lot to Commons Pond, where Maggie drops Molly off to do her lifeguard work. Maggie, said goodbye to her daughter and did not realize that was the last time she would ever see her again. She had watched as Molly walked towards the shed where she would change into her lifeguard gear, and that was it. And at 10:03 a.m., approximately 5 minutes after Maggie left, there were people who finally walked onto the beach at Commons Pond. They didn't notice anyone was there. They saw the lifeguard chair where the lifeguard would always be sitting, but no one was sitting in it. And there was an open first aid kit. They also saw a backpack that would later be known to be Molly's backpack sitting, I guess, by a bench close to her chair. There was a towel draped over the chair, and then there were like flip-flops in front of the chair, indicating that at one point, someone was sitting in that chair that morning. But the thing is the lifeguard, who would be Molly at this time, was nowhere to be found. So roughly an hour later, another coworker or the person who hired her, something like that, arrived at Commons Pond and found out that Molly wasn't there. And they were like, well, that's strange, because Molly is this incredibly reliable young girl. Like, she never does this. This is so weird, especially her stuff is here, but where is she? And so that immediately became like a big concern. At 11:44 a.m., her boss calls the police to report that Molly might be missing. And that's when they find out, because I guess, from what I understand, the lifeguard on duty is supposed to radio to the police at the beginning of their lifeguard shift. But they found out that Molly did not radio in at the beginning of her shift, which was supposed to be, I think, 10 a.m. So at that point, they contact Molly's mom, Maggie, and they tell her, like, there's been no lifeguard here all day at the beach. You know, do you know where she is? They confirmed to her mom, like, her stuff is here. We have her stuff. We know she was here, but now she's not. Maggie rushes back to Commons Pond, and she begins, looking for her daughter. And she knows that at 9:58 a.m., that Molly was there. Molly got there. She watched her walk into the shed to get changed. And then she pulled away, the mom. And then, according to the next witness, at 10:03 a.m., this witness arrives to hang out at the beach, but there is no sign of a lifeguard. However, it looks as if the lifeguard had at least been by her chair for a moment. So between 9:58 a.m., her last known confirmed sighting by her mom, and 10:03 a.m., something happened. Something happened in that very small window of time. But what? Unfortunately, the police did not treat this appropriately. They really kind of looked at this as a 16-year-old girl who just abandoned her job, and now she's just a runaway and she'll be back. The other issue is they trampled all over the scene where there would have been potential evidence if something bad happened. There were just people everywhere. But, her mom is telling them, like, listen, her flip-flops are right here by her chair. Her towel is here. Her backpack is here. If she was running away, she would at least have shoes on. And that's all she brought with her. Well, those flip-flops. So where is she gone, shoeless, without... they were just like, they wanted this so bad to be just a runaway girl. But it wasn't. Because police reached out to all of her friends, and they all said she wasn't with them. And then that's when police were like, oh my God, did she go into the pond and drown, maybe? So that's when they take a bunch of divers, and they are just combing that pond back and forth, up and down. They're searching there for hours and hours, looking for any sign that Molly may have gone in there and somehow just drowned. It seems kind of unusual. It would seem kind of odd considering she was a lifeguard. So they knew she could swim, but you had to check. You had to, because you never know. They combed it and they found absolutely nothing. They found no traces of Molly. And like I said, this pond is just surrounded by very dense woods. So they brought in, dogs. They picked up, they got something that had Molly's scent on it. So they had the dogs search with other human searchers around all of these woods. And they, again, they came up with nothing. Even though the crime scene was essentially trampled and it was contaminated, when people first arrived, they could tell there was no sign of a struggle at this pond. There was no indications that things were thrown everywhere and that someone was trying to grab things. And there was no like drag marks to indicate that someone had been, dragged away against their will from, the chair or that area by the chair. And so they did feel that something bad happened at that point, because they knew at that point she didn't go into the pond and drown. She wasn't in the woods. Someone must have taken her. But they had hundreds of officers, they had family, they had people in the community all kind of searching, and they searched for for miles and miles and miles around the pond. This included all of the other foresty areas. This included other bodies of water that they had in the area. They brought in, they were in the sky with helicopters. They had more search dogs. They had people on foot, people driving in their cars, looking. If they just came up with nothing. It's like this girl was there, and then 5 minutes later, she was just gone. And that can't happen. Something had to have happened in that 5-minute window of time. And so they're basically left with the conclusion of either she left on her own, which seemed very unlikely and very kind of unreasonable. Especially her family said, she's never run away before. She's never threatened to run away before. This is out of character. So you have that possibility. Then you have the possibility that someone just grabbed her and abducted her. I guess there was like a cemetery nearby in these woods, and that's very creepy to begin with. Maybe she was brought there, but they did search it, and they just didn't find any sign of her there. But maybe the person who took her maybe they were hiding out there. Maybe they were there waiting, and then they went to the pond and waited for Molly to get there, because this wasn't Molly's first day on the job. So maybe someone was stalking her from kind of nearby, and then finally pounced when they had the opportunity. Molly's mom would tell police really early on that there was a concerning individual a short time prior to the day she went missing. It was the end of Molly's first week of working there as a lifeguard. So Molly's mom said when they pulled into the parking lot this particular day, not the day she went missing, another day, there was like this late model white sedan type car just sitting and idling in the parking lot, and there was a man behind the wheel. This man was just sort of casually sitting in his car, smoking a cigarette. And, Maggie got some very off-putting vibes from this dude. And obviously, it was just kind of weird. He was the only one in the parking lot smoking a cigarette, just sort of like. So Maggie was like, all right, I'm not leaving until this dude is gone. And so at that point, Molly gets out of the car, she gets ready for work, but Maggie is just sitting in her car, and she's like staring this man down, trying to be like, hey, I see you, maybe you'll leave now. But he's like, and he's just staring back at her. And she says that she can see him kind of like squinting at her, like almost trying to intimidate her. He didn't seem to give two shits. And he just sat there staring at Maggie now, and he's just smoking a cigarette looking at her. But Maggie is like, I'm not backing down. And so she waits for 20, 30 minutes, and the man finally starts his car up and he takes off. And she waits for him to be gone for like a while. And then she leaves. Now that there's other people coming into the pond to swim. So now the day of the disappearance, when Maggie drops Molly off, she looks in the parking lot just to make sure that the man from the other day wasn't there again. She confirms he wasn't. She actually saw another company there unloading sand, which was a local company that, she was aware of. And so she felt, okay, I feel good about this. And so she left. So once police knew about this man in the white vehicle, they first of all, they get a composite drawing of this man made based on Maggie's description. And once they have this information out there, another witness comes forward to say that they also saw a strange man in a white, a late model white sedan at a local car wash that's right down the road from Commons Pond on the day that Molly disappeared. That truck that Maggie saw the day of the disappearance that was unloading sand, that local company, they also told police, we also saw a man driving a white sedan nearby. But these sand people delivering the sand or whatever, they said that they saw the man just like 3 or 4 minutes before Maggie and Molly arrived. But then when Molly and Maggie arrived, that man wasn't in the parking lot, the man with the car. So was he there before? Did he see them coming into the parking lot and managed to drive away without being seen by them? Maybe. And then earlier I said there was a cemetery right kind of behind the pond, and there was a worker at the cemetery who said, I also saw a white sedan there that morning with a man behind the wheel. There is a pathway from the cemetery that leads all the way down to the pond. That's like a pedestrian place for them to walk. So what may have happened was this man, if he is the one responsible, parked his car at the cemetery. He knew Molly at that point because he maybe have been stalking her, maybe have been following her, maybe have been waiting for the opportune moment. So maybe he parked his car at the cemetery, walked down that path, took Molly the moment she got to her chair, and dragged her back up the walkway. More than likely, he probably had a weapon, a gun or a knife, something to make sure Molly didn't scream or say anything. So that way, nobody would have heard an altercation. This also explains why there wasn't any signs of like a drag mark, so there wasn't like a sign of a struggle where there was a fight that took place. The chair wasn't knocked over, nothing was rummaged through. So it appears that she was taken against her will via some sort of weapon. Except one person would come forward to say they did hear the sound of an altercation in the form of a scream. A loud scream came that morning. So maybe the man surprised Molly, made her scream, then they took out the gun or the knife, whatever weapon they had, to make her stay quiet, then walk away. Police had set up roadblocks the day of the disappearance, in case someone did take her, but this was already like 2 or so hours after she would have been taken. So the roadblocks really wouldn't have done much, but, they put them up anyway. They thought, okay, maybe this man is a convicted sex offender. It's possible. And so they have composite drawings based on Maggie's description and also the other witnesses. They've made up like 1 or 2 different composite drawings of this man. And so they're kind of comparing against the registered sex offenders in the area to see if maybe that image matches up, but they don't really have much luck. This is right. This is like in the heyday of like emails, back when emailing became a thing, the year 2000. So they decided to do like an email chain, and they took Molly's image and they blasted out emails to like 30, 40,000 people, just, for any hope that someone may recognize her. They also obviously put Molly's image all over the news. She was in the papers. The story was in the papers. They had the image of the composite drawing in there. Her image was everywhere. This man's image was everywhere. And so they were hoping that someone would come forward to say they have information. A year goes by and they still have nothing. They have no new developments with regards to the man, despite the eerie accuracy, as Maggie says, of the drawing, of one of the drawings, especially the drawing of the man squinting and holding a cigarette. She says that is just like very creepily accurate, which is terrifying. But despite that, nothing. There's absolutely nothing. Molly's mom and dad say they're not going to stop. And they're going to keep fighting until they find their little girl. They're not going to stop until whoever did this is held responsible for whatever they may have done to her. In November of 2002, a man was, hunting near Whiskey Hill by West Warren Road when he says he spotted a bathing suit just kind of on its own in the woods. Now, obviously this is a small community. Everyone knew the Molly Bish story. And he was like, in his head, he's like, oh my God, is this Molly's bathing suit? But then he says he remembers it being a different color based on what the description was on the news of the bathing suit. So he didn't think anything of it. And so he just left it there. Several months later, he's talking to a friend about how he saw a bathing suit on Whiskey Hill. And the friend was like, well, what did you do with it? He goes, nothing. I didn't think it was Molly's bathing suit because it wasn't the same color as what I thought it was. But then the friend was like, well, the one you're describing is the one she was wearing. And so they're like, whoa, what? So the man who initially found it calls police, and the police go to that area and they find the bathing suit. But at that exact moment when they find the bathing suit, there isn't anything else within that direct vicinity of where the bathing suit was found. So they collect it, but they of course begin a very thorough search of this area to see if they can find Molly, because her bathing suit is there. She's not in it. Where's Molly? On June 3rd, 2003, within 500-600 feet or so where the bathing suit was found, they find bones that are later confirmed to be human bones. Through DNA and dental records, they confirmed that those bones belonged to 16-year-old Molly Bish. Unfortunately, because they didn't have every single one of her bones, because also they were just bones, they could not determine her exact cause of death. They did say that the manner of death was homicide, that Molly Bish was murdered. What it seems like is that Molly Bish was taken within minutes of her arriving at the pond by this unknown man, and she is probably, they can't confirm this, but probably sexually assaulted, and then she is killed, and she is likely put into a shallow grave. But with this being a heavily wooded area with a lot of wildlife, animals likely dug up her remains and just sort of unfortunately picked at her, and then making her remains just sort of scattered everywhere. It happens, unfortunately, all the time. But it didn't bring them any closer to finding out who did it. It didn't point to anyone or anything. In 2007, police believe that a man named Robert Bruno may have been the man to have done this to Molly, because this man, Robert Bruno, had abducted and he attempted to sexually assault a jogger. This was only a couple miles away from where Molly was taken. He looked a lot like the sketch as well. However, from what I understand, police were able to clear him in having involvement in Molly's case. In 2009 or so, police received another tip about a man named Rodney Stanger. He had allegedly murdered his girlfriend, Crystal Morrison. And at the time of Molly's case, he did live within a few miles of Commons Pond. He also, they discovered, lived within, walking distance of the YMCA that Molly would attend a lot when she was getting her lifeguard certification. So maybe he saw her there. Less than a year after Molly was taken and killed, he moved out of state all the way to Florida. Was he trying to run away from this? Police interviewed, people in his life, and they found out that he was a frequent visitor to Commons Pond as well. And he was known to hunt in the same woods where Molly's remains were found. He too had a resemblance to the composite drawing. Allegedly, people say they saw him at the pond or near the pond the morning of disappearance and murder. Now, Crystal Morrison had apparently told people that Rodney had said he had killed some people in Massachusetts, and then Crystal Morrison ends up dead, and he is later convicted of her murder. But police have never been able to link him to the murder directly. They've never found any evidence or proof that he actually was involved in the murder of Molly Bish. A lot of kind of circumstantial stuff and witness stuff, but they just don't have any concrete proof that he was the one. In 2011, another suspect was brought into the fold. His name was Gerald Battistoni. He had allegedly sexually assaulted someone in the 90s. And then later on, he was convicted of another sexual assault, and he went to prison for it. Well, apparently he also has connections to Commons Pond, because the victim where he was eventually convicted of sexually assaulting, she lived on Commons Pond Road, right by Commons Pond, at the time of Molly's disappearance. Other people said that he was also very familiar with the woods, the Whiskey Hill Woods area where Molly was found. Battistoni also resembles the composite drawing. There are apparently a lot of men in the area who looked like this composite, and that's frightening. Police, I guess, looked into this, and they asked Battistoni's, wife at the time, and she told police that she was driving a white Chevy vehicle, sedan type vehicle, and at that time he had been driving it to help fix it or something. And the day of the disappearance, he had driven it around the Warren area. where Molly was taken. Allegedly, when his name was put out in the news in 2011, he actually tried, about, being related to this case, the Molly Bish case, he allegedly tried to end his own life, but failed. And then in 2014, he actually died at the age of 52, but I'm not sure how. So the case basically goes cold. But then in 2013, the Bish family asks police, well, listen, can we have evidence, physical evidence. Can we take this and can we swab it and test it for DNA? Because back in 2000, they weren't as advanced, obviously, as we were then. And so they said, okay, we can try that. So they had sent about 20 plus items to the forensic labs nearby to test for DNA, for any kind of, trace DNA. Now, apparently, they were able to get DNA from someone who wasn't Molly off of some of these items. And so now it's a matter of finding the person to match them to. So we're fast forwarding now to June of 2021. The Worcester County District Attorney announced that they had a person of interest in the Molly Bish case, and his name was Francis P. Sumner Sr. Well, the thing is 5 years before this, so 5 years before 2021, Francis, or Frank, had died. And so if he was the guy, he was not going to be prosecuted for this. But, they want to see if maybe he's the guy. Apparently, Francis Sumner was someone whose name had been given to police with regards to Molly's case a few times over the years. One, he very much resembles the composite drawing, and there's actually an image of him, of the actual Francis Sumner, smoking a cigarette or holding a cigarette, and it looks eerily similar to the composite drawing. Way back in 1981, Francis Sumner had been convicted of sexually assaulting a young woman. He was working at a repair shop. This girl had come in to get her car fixed, and that's basically when he did what he did to her. He was released from prison in 1997 or 1998, I'm not 100% sure. But he was out by the time Molly's case happened. When police were looking into him, he was still, at this point, even though after he's been out of prison and everything, he was back to working in repair shops. So a customer of his would come forward to police, when they're looking into him many, many years later, to say that this customer had brought in a white sedan type vehicle, similar to the vehicle that may have been seen with Molly's potential killer. And so this customer brought that car in, so maybe he took that car and drove it around Warren, and which led to him finding Molly in that pond and taking her. Francis Sumner was described as a very aggressive man, a very scary person. He had stalked women before. He was a violent guy. And so he really fit the bill. Like this may be the guy. However, even though his name had popped up kind of over the years, all of this new information with regards to all of this potential concrete evidence against him didn't really surface until after he died. So he was never actually brought in by police, and he was never questioned. Police do have DNA now. So Francis Sumner had a son, and so what they did was they decided to take DNA from Francis's son and try to match it up against the DNA found with the Molly Bish evidence. Unfortunately, surprisingly, it wasn't a match. From what I understand, I'm not too well versed on how all of this DNA stuff works, but police have said that they still haven't necessarily ruled Francis Sumner out, even though this DNA evidence has come forward. They said that more testing needs to be done. And as of June of this year, 2023, they are still running DNA tests from all the evidence from the Molly Bish case. As of right now, as of me filming this in November of 2023, there is no announced official suspect. There is no confirmed suspect. You have this sort of list of persons of interest. A couple of them have been ruled out. A couple of them may not be ruled out. Have they tested the DNA found against those other suspects? I'm actually not sure. I imagine they are trying to, but as of now, they haven't announced that they have, or obviously they haven't announced that they've gotten a hit. It does sound like, though, and by the way, Heather Bish, I don't know if it's still active, or I mean, I know it's still on TikTok. She has a TikTok page about her sister. So Heather Bish is still, and her family are still very much trying to get this resolved. They're very much trying to, at least, even if the killer is dead, even, if it is this Francis Sumner person, they still want that answer and that justice for Molly. Molly deserves that, at least, to say we know who did it. But as of right now, they're just still waiting to find out who did it. I mean, that's it. But it does seem like now that it's 2023 and our technology it's advancing literally every minute that we speak. It seems like that there is a very close, soon-to-be resolution to this case. It really feels like that to the family. It sounds like. It really sounds like they are hopeful that there will be answers, definitive answers, very, very, very soon. When exactly that is, cannot say. But it does sound like they are on the brink of finally knowing. And that's all you can really hope for the Bish family, just those answers. As of right now, though, as of me filming this case is still unsolved. And so if you have any information about the kidnapping and murder of 16-year-old Molly Bish, you can actually reach out to the anonymous tip line. You can call 508-453-7575. And it's an anonymous tip line, so you can report your information anonymously. You don't got to tell who you are. And so I believe there is a reward being offered to any information that leads to either an arrest or the answers to this, 2 decades long mystery. 23 years now. Somebody somewhere out there knows the truth, and perhaps that someone is you. So please, if you have that information, do everything you can to help this family get the closure and the justice, especially the justice that Molly rightfully deserves. But that is it for this case. True crime, a Rooney Dooney Dingleberry Dongs. Hope you found it interesting. As usual, please subscribe, give the video a like, and follow me over on TikTok. Join my Discord if you want. I sell merch, yada, yada, yada. Recommend a case. What else is there, eh? What else is there to say? Not this. Not this. As usual, do you guys like doing the do? I do the do. I do the do all the time. Wink. What? I don't. I'm empty, barkeep. Fill her up. I'm the barkeep. It's not even a bar. It's a stupid house. It's just Mountain Dew. It's not anything special. It's not even like Mountain Dew for fat people, like Diet Mountain Dew, right? It's just a regular Mountain Dew. I'm just making myself fatter, but that's what I'm drinking because you didn't ask. You didn't ask. This is awkward because I don't know how to say goodbye. I didn't turn the lights on. Why didn't you guys tell me, you jerks? This video won't be festive because there's not lights in the background. That's on you. That's on you. Anyway, I love you. Goodbye.